What you said to me last night, it was cruel. Helly was never cruel.
She
around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple.
What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Underground Audience Secret. And today we are going to talk about Severance Season 2 season finale. And one of the main things we're going to talk about today is why Mark made an error in judgment. Did Mark make a decision that is going to absolutely ruin the next part of his life? We're going to talk about today in the video. Now, I want to preface this video by saying I did give the season finale a great rating. I think I would probably give it a 9 out of 10 in terms of my rating. But I believe the last 5 minutes of this episode actually kept it from being a perfect 10. And I'm going to explain in how Mark Scout, his innie, actually caused this to happen, in my opinion. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think that this episode could have been a perfect 100 and what I think any Mark could have done differently. So one of the first things we want to discuss, the first reason is at the beginning of this episode, we see a conversation happens between any Mark and Audi Mark in the cabin alongside Miss Cobell, and also alongside Devin. Now, one of the things we have to realize is this is the first time that any Mark and Audi Mark have actually had a conversation with each other. So it's kind of the first time they're even being able to see each other's personality. Now, outside of the previous 19 episodes, we really don't see any Mark in a position other than maybe one episode where he is upset. And this is probably the first episode where we've seen any Mark actually think logically and actually do some critical thinking to see what implications his actions actually have on his Audi and on himself. So we see when he's discussing with Audi Mark on what to do next, Audi Mark is actually requesting that he go in on this, essentially this mission to free his wife, Gemma. Now, the problem with that is as any Mark thinks through the entire plan, he realizes that if this mission succeeds, it could be the end of him and his any life as he knows it. Now, he's wrestling with the fact of, is it worth it to do this? Now, Audi Mark talks about reintegration, which of course any Mark has no idea about. And he explains that the two can be merged. And then we see the critical thinking right here from any Mark, and where he says, well, yeah, if we merge, most of the memories and feelings are going to be Audi Mark's because, of course, any Mark is essentially maybe 2 years old, right? So he doesn't have a lot of memories, other than how he feels about his friends on the severed floor, and of course, Helly. Then we start to see that he develops distrust in Audi Mark, and he thinks that Audi Mark is actually making up the whole concept of reintegration just so he can get what he needs done. And he thinks, he doesn't trust. It seems like he doesn't trust Audi Mark, but maybe at this point, because of the whole Helena and Helly situation, he just doesn't trust Audis in general. So we see that he doesn't want to do this, but ultimately he has a conversation with Miss Cobell, who says, hey, I know you want to have this relationship with Helly, but it's not possible. She's an eagan, and that's not a plausible thing to do. He doesn't like that, storms out, and the next thing you know, we see him on the severed floor, which is going to bring me to my next reason why I think any Mark makes a bad decision. Now, once any Mark gets to the severed floor, he gets to the point where he's at the desk finishing the Cold Harbor file. So I'm not going to get into just every little detail that happens in the episode on this video. I'm going to hone in on the series of decisions that Mark makes. So when he's talking to Helly at the computer screen, the thing is, Helly seems to be convincing him that, hey, what your Audi says makes sense. This is probably something that you should do. You know, she mentions I'm her, which I'm not 100% sure what she means by that. I interpret it to mean that I'm her, meaning Gemma is to Audi Mark what I am to you. So here's a reason that you should go on this mission and free Gemma. So Any Mark hears that, and it seems like that influences him to go ahead and finish the file and continue on this mission, which is extremely dangerous, puts them all at risk, and all the innies at risk by going down to the testing floor and essentially freeing Gemma. Now, when Any Mark makes this decision, you've got to know that to complete this mission, you're going to have to not only save Gemma, but you're going to have to leave the facility in order for Gemma to actually have a way to freedom. Okay? If you simply free Gemma and go on about your any life, you have not freed Gemma. You've just put her in another position to be captured again. You've left her alone, etc. So he would have had to be thinking through this at the time he makes the decision, I'm going to go to the testing floor. Okay, so that's the second. The second reason is the instant he makes a decision to go on this mission to the testing floor and free Gemma from Cold Harbor, he knows what has to happen for this to work. Now, let's talk about reason number 3. Mark's now placed in a position where he inadvertently comes across Mr. Drummond, and Mr. Drummond catches him doing something he shouldn't be doing. It looks like Mr. Drummond knows that he's trying to either go down to the testing floor, or at least he knows he's doing something he has no business doing in this particular time. Obviously, Mr. Drummond attacks Mark. A fight ensues, and eventually what happens is he gets beaten. So Mark is just beating down on Mr. Drummond. Again, all because he's trying to get down to Gemma. Now, there's a possibility that during this fight, Mark can die. We see where Mr. Drummond tries to choke him out because of this mission. So Mark's made the decision to beat on him and continue forward down the testing floor hallway to get down to Gemma. Now, at this point, Mark is aware that whoever finds him from Lumon is going to potentially want to kill him, if not imprison him, but it looks like they're okay with taking Mark's life. So he intentionally makes the decision to keep going after the fact, instead of actually beating Mr. Drummond, incapacitating him, and just saying, hey, forget this, I'm going to go back and get Helly, it's not worth it. He makes another decision to continue on the mission. So here's reason number 3 of Mark making another decision that seemingly at the time sounds like a good decision because we all want him to free Gemma. So let's go to the next reason and his next decision. Now, right when Any Mark makes the decision to get on the testing floor elevator, he's got to know that he's going to be severed the instant he goes down that elevator. So he's going down that elevator essentially with a weapon. So he goes down there with the weapon pointed at Mr. Drummond. The elevator dings, he's severed, and then you can see he actually lets off a shot and kills Mr. Drummond. So now we have an Audi Mark actually killing a Lumon employee. The body stays on the testing floor, which means other Lumon employees are going to see it. We now have Mark S responsible for a murder of a Lumon employee as he's going on this mission to free Gemma. Again, makes the decision to continue going forward to Cold Harbor. Obviously, this is Audi Mark at this point, so he's doing everything he can to find that room. Finds that room, saves Gemma, brings her back out. They get back on the elevator, but obviously he knows when they get back on the elevator, they're going to be severed again. They get back to testing floor. It's any Mark again, along with Miss Casey, whom he knows, but he does not have a deep romantic relationship with. It typically, essentially, it's just someone he liked and worked with, but he doesn't have those feelings towards Miss Casey. All of his feelings are towards Heliar. Now, once he gets back to that same floor, he rushes down the hallway all the way to the actual stairwell, the severed stairwell, has her go out. Gemma goes out. Again, he knows when she goes out this door, she's going to be Gemma again and not Miss Casey. So as he's making a decision to push her out the door, he knows that this person is going to be aware that they are outside of the stairwell and be able to see their spouse or husband, whom they haven't seen in probably about 2 years, not come outside with them. So after all of this work, Any Mark makes a decision to hesitate before he goes out of the door. Now, here's where the worst decision he made occurs, in my opinion. Now, and this show has not established, in my opinion, the fact that Ennis can't think past, the next 30 seconds or 5 minutes. Now, if that would have been drilled down a little bit more in the show, maybe this decision is a little bit more logical. But what happens is Mark starts to think, well, if I go out of this door, essentially my existence might be over. I'm not sure about this reintegration. I'm sure about all of these things are going through his mind at this particular point. Then, right on cue, Heliar shows up and he's having to make a decision between, am I going to go outside or am I going to go back with Heliar? Now, let's just weigh these decisions logically. If he goes outside with Gemma, there's still a chance, because of reintegration, that maybe he might be able to still have an existence. If he can get outside with Gemma, because of reintegration, that he may not be completely erased. Now, there's also the option with Heliar where he can turn and go with her and try to find somewhere, I guess, to run inside of a lumon facility where there are at least 3 to 4 people chasing him, not only because he freed Gemma, because he murdered a lumon executive and freed someone they had kidnapped. So they're in this same building. He makes the decision to go with Heliar and run where? Where exactly is he going? There's nowhere for any Mark to go. And let's just say he does find somewhere for them to go. At a certain point, someone is going to come to retrieve Helena Eagan. If it takes the full force of Lumon Industries, they will find Helena Eagan. So at best, any Mark may have 10 minutes, 15 minutes more with Heliar, at the expense of potentially not only his life as any Mark, but Audi Mark's wife. So he's put his any and his Audi's life at risk for maybe 10 to 15 more minutes with Heliar, who will turn into an Eagan when severed and probably come after him as well. So this is where this decision to me is completely illogical. On top of that fact, he has, quote unquote, freed Gemma into the severed hallway where she's alone by herself with no car, no way to get home, no protection, and essentially 3 to 4 Lumon employees looking for her since she's escaped the testing floor. So Mark has essentially put Gemma, his any self, his Audi self, all in danger of being captured or killed, all for 10 to 15 minutes more with Heliar, who could at any point be switched back to Helena Eagan, as far as we know. So Here's why I believe may make sense from an emotional standpoint. Logically, just didn't really hold up to, I guess, what it seems any Mark would do, or what Heliar would want him to do. But we can make the case that do not think logically and they have not emotionally developed well enough, the Innies, to make sound decisions, because as we see, Innie Dylan try to propose to his Audie's wife, whom is already married to him. So maybe they just don't think through things at that pace. But in my conclusion, I do think this episode was a 9 out of 10. I love the scenes, the fight scenes. I love the scenes with the goat, and I thought that was tied up pretty nicely as well. Cinematography looked great. The acting was very well done, and of course, the band was one of the highlights of the actual episode for me. So my conclusion, I want to give it a 9 out of 10, and I think it's one of the better shows we've had this season. However, I do think it could have been perfect. I think maybe a better ending would have been any Mark going out of the door with Gemma, and Audie Mark and Gemma trying to escape from the Lumon complex, and them also giving a story about how Mark will be reintegrated and trying to find a way to reunite Helly and any Mark without having an ending that's pretty much condemned. That's it for this video, guys. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, how they could have ended this video better, and kind of let me know what you thought of this season altogether.